Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and very excited to welcome our next guest from the gritty streets to the quiet chapels. Hallowed Beats takes us on a sonic pilgrimage, all while maintaining an unapologetic, authentic Catholic edge. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So for those that might not be familiar with your music, tell us a little about Hallowed Beats and what it all kind of sounds like.
Yeah, so basically one interesting thing about it started in 2019 initially as a secular music project, but music being my cathartic output, as I started reverting back to the faith, it became unapologetically Catholic.
So I guess a question real quick, because you mentioned you reverted. What was it that kind of spurred you to revert back to the faith?
There's a couple things. God basically shook me and was like, "Come home, son." One thing that happened that was pretty substantial was I was driving home from school and I got into a horrible hit and run car accident, and I was just on the side of the road. And I remember being in my mangled car mess, and this man just gets me out of the car, and he goes, "Son, you shouldn't be alive right now." And I was like, "Well, thank you so much." And I was all delirious at the time, getting out of the car. I had no clue really what happened. And he goes, "I was just on my way to a church retreat, and I happened to be behind you." And at that moment, I felt like I saw an angel. And I know that there's this thing where sometimes you feel like there just could be an angel in human form. You never know.
Yeah.
And I truly felt at that point God sent me an angel. And from then I was like a maybe no, maybe yes agnostic. And a switch just went off. Like, okay, God is real and he saved my life. And as life went on, I went to the Latin Mass, which my mom brought me to because she was always very religious. And that just blew my mind. And from there, it was like the flame was lit, and it hasn't stopped burning.
Wow. Yeah. Sometimes it takes that spiritual 2x4 to really hit us. I'm glad that you're here still with us, and that you had that experience to bring you back into the fold there. So I guess one interesting aspect of your music, and I guess you'd call it post-punk music, is that style of music have always been really countercultural, which is interesting because Catholicism is also countercultural. There's a link there. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so essentially Catholicism is, in my opinion, is countercultural and has always been countercultural. Even in a time where it was a norm in entire countries to be Catholic, actually radically following the teachings of Christ is countercultural, since as humans we usually do the bare minimum just to get by, but we want to shoot for heaven and not purgatory. In music it's a little more complicated depending on where you are in the spectrum, but it's like it is that we need to be against the grain, because the norm is really never enough, because we get complacent in these things. So I feel like bringing the two together is pretty necessary, especially in a world where, music is always changing, and the norm of music, you have to use that as a medium to proclaim Christ, whether it's overt or subvert, because having it be subvert is really, really effective as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And speaking of that, how does your Catholic faith influence your songwriting?
Like I said earlier, music's a cathartic experience, so it's essentially my way to reach some sort of emotional balance. And as both spiritually and religious person, there's no separating the two.
Yeah, definitely. What's really interesting, as far as, the style of your music, how has your music resonated with the Catholic community, or maybe those that know what you do at your parish?
Yeah, it's really funny when I'm talking to someone at church and I'm like, "Yeah, you ever listen to to music, or and because sometimes you shamelessly self promote. They're like, yeah, it's this Hallowed guy, and I say, oh, I'm Hallowed, and they're like, whoa, or like the young altar servers, because I altar serve, and it's amazing, and I like to consider the sacristy is essentially the Catholic locker room for men training to become priests, and it's like there's a great atmosphere of you're talking to the young guys, and it's like it's a nice experience, and so like hearing the younger guys say, yeah, I listen to Hallowed all the time, and it's an amazing thing, but then sometimes it gets me scared, like, oh, I need to make sure my songs are amazing. Can't release any junk.
Wow, that's wild. So you serve mass. That's very cool. It's almost, if one were looking from the outside world, like, oh, you make you make punk music. Oh, you serve the Holy Mass as well. That's wild. That's so cool. Is that something that you got into after your reversion?
Yeah, definitely. Because as a kid, my mom used to run Divine Mercy Sunday, and I remember once carrying the cross and serving. But like, I feel like at the traditional mass, it was just such a different experience serving, because there's a lot of responsibilities. And I remember after my reversion serving the new mass versus the traditional mass and like the differences. But I remember just being invited one day, and I did it, and it's I took a break from serving for a couple of months, because I've been sitting with my fiance in the pews, and I remember I went back to serve, and I'm kneeling during the consecration, or no, it was during the prayers at the foot of the altar, and I just felt like I was in Mass of the Ages when they're showing all the clips of the Mass, and it's just such a beautiful experience, just be able to get the privilege to be next to the priest saying Mass is just so amazing.
Yeah, I bet getting that kind of close up, whereas many, like, I will typically sit in the back because of our children that melt down typically, so it's kind of just escape in the outside there. But kind of going back to your music, one of the songs that I like to listen to is Saint Catherine of Siena, because it's just got a really solid beat, and I love the lines in there. Take a bath, you smell like mortal sin. I love that. Are there any tracks that hold special meaning for you?
Yeah, there's this song, two songs, Put Your Arms Around Me, which is off the album Dolorosa, and then the song Falling, which is on Rad Trad. And they're both songs dealing with the topic of being in mortal sin and just being sorry. Put Your Arms Around Me specifically is sort of just like begging God to take you and raise you up, and like with my music, I like it's different than contemporary Catholic music, because I feel like or contemporary Christian music, because I feel like that there is this sort of like fugue of always being happy. When we're Catholics, we have emotions. We also have guilt and shame, and like to have that music, the Catholic themes in a sad song, it's like, this is how I feel, and I know that there's other people out there that feel the same way. But like overall, it's like we having the song, it's just like a deep prayer, begging for God's help and grace.
Yeah. Have you ever, encountered any challenges or maybe like misconceptions about being a quote unquote Catholic punk artist at all?
Yeah, there's always, everyone has their their top hat on and their opinion on everything, and it's like, it's because I'm starting to realize to just do your thing, and if your spiritual advisors are saying it's cool, that's fine. Because there's this whole phenomena too now with people that are like, oh, any music that's not Gregorian chant is work of Satan. And it's like, okay, all right, I don't know how I'm going to please you.
Yeah, I bet. We have a question from our YouTube chat. What inspired your album art?
Oh, my album art? So the Dolorosa album art, which is like the Mater Dolorosa, my friend at my church, his name is Western Artistry on the internet, makes amazing art. And is one of the few people out there doing like classical Catholic art. He just had a bunch of pictures on his website, and I saw it and I thought it was beautiful, and I said, I want this as my album art. And then he sort of made it purple to like fit the color, which is amazing. And then for the album Rad Trad, I went to the seminary, the local seminary in Douglaston, which has been closed. So please pray for vocations, because there is 0 seminaries on Long Island now because it's dried up. And it was beautiful because I would always drive by it when I was going to work. And there's this arch that you can't really see in the album cover if you don't look too closely, but it says in Latin, the salvation of souls is the job of the church. I'm probably saying that wrong. And I thought that was epic to be standing underneath. And then I was just like, I'm going to get a balloon and stand there. I don't know. It might look cool.
That's awesome.
So that came out.
That's so good. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. We can follow you pretty much any social media at Hallowed Beats. Like I said, really appreciate you joining on the show. But hey, the song that you hear now means that Morning Joy, Where Truth Matters, is complete for this morning. There's 2 things. I always bring up 2 things. First, if you're staying here, especially if you're listening to the radio, for Holy Mass, please pray for all of us. We'll pray for you. But secondly, if you're wanting to join our after-show clubhouse, exclusive way to kind of debrief from the show and have a conversation with you, gotta go search Morning Joy on Facebook, Twitter, X, Facebook, I mentioned, YouTube, Rumble, so many. But if this is us parting ways, God bless. Make it a joyful weekend.
This has been Morning Joy, Where Truth Matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.